Hi, it's Glenn McQueenie, and welcome to my 25-minute success podcast. Today is going to be a little bit of an interesting call because we have Zahra Marani from Marani Law on the line. How you doing, Zahra?
I'm great, Glenn. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. And I'm really very interested and excited about this call because what we're going to be talking about is the 10 ways to bulletproof your transaction in a shifting market. What I found is that in an up market, which we've been really going through for sure in Toronto for the last 19 years, a lot of the mistakes that get made by agents, they kind of get almost covered up or forgotten about because from when the time somebody actually buys the house until they close it, the house has gone up, sometimes 5, 10, 15% in value. But I really wanted to have Zahra on the line today to really help you focus on making sure that if you're going to write a transaction and do all the work, that we can kind of talk about the, say, 8 to 9 to 10 different ways to bulletproof the transaction. So not only when you write the transaction that it actually closes, but more importantly, that you get paid. Because as we've entered into a shifting market, and where prices are lower sometimes on closing than when they were bought, and there's some issues with appraisals going on and stuff. What can we do as agents just to really kind of bulletproof these transactions to make sure that they don't fall apart? So I had to pick up the phone and call my expert, Zahra, who's on the line. So Zahra, what kind of opening words would you give to the agents listening to right now of what you've been experiencing just even recently with trying to hold transactions together?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Glenn. I would definitely say that over the past couple of months, particularly since the announcement in April, and even a little bit previous to that, when the market was just getting too fiery hot, there's been some transactions that we have had, different issues with that we weren't experiencing prior to that. And definitely one thing that I would suggest for for agents is to push for larger deposits now. I would probably suggest looking for at least 10%, and also to have quick closings. So we don't want to have 90-day closings because the market could dramatically change in 90 days at this point. And so, the 30-day closes with 10% down, those deals are much more secure than, say, 5% and 90-day closing.
Zahra, that's a great point because so many people are caught in this trap, right, where they bought in March, now it's closing in June, the prices have dropped maybe 30% because they went up almost 30% from January. That we're really having a hard time, sometimes depending on the lender, if they did the appraisal when the deal was written or as it's coming up to closing. So I think that's great advice that you gave them because if it's a 5% deposit, it's maybe a little bit easier in the customer's mind to kind of go, oh, I'm going to try to walk away from it. We know they can't really walk away from it, but I think having that extra chunk of money and also having that shorter closing, to your point, is really like amazing advice because now we know that the appraisal is not going to move that much, and they've got a lot more down payment that's going to or deposit that's going to compel them to close.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the more there is, vested in the transaction, the better. And yeah, the 30 days definitely, or like the quicker closings, just make sure that there's not as big of a change in the market. Certainly.
Sure. So number one is get a 10% deposit and a quick closing. And what would you say number two would be to help these agents bulletproof their transactions in a shifting market?
I think coming out of the market that we have just come out of, people are used to and sort of anchored onto the idea of not putting conditions in their offers, and that's something that needs to change if it hasn't already. We need to look at, even putting something like a review from the lawyers, the buyer solicitor, to review the agreement within 2 business days or 1 business day. And if you have a great relationship with a lawyer, then you can, pick up the phone and say, hey, I really need you to take a quick look at this just so that we can make sure that this goes through. Um, but certainly no conditions in the offer and buying as is without anything in there is not necessary anymore. We're not in that seller's market like we were before, and in the type of market that we're in, they're required, I think.
Sure. I think this is the time really for agents to, because you can, right? I mean, before you had to put in, you really couldn't put in conditions, which caused a lot of hardship for us agents too, because we wanted to protect our clients by putting a condition on financing, a condition on home inspection, and even putting a condition on a lawyer's review of it. We used to be able to get those conditions all the time because, being, condition precedent, we could get out of that deal if there was ever a problem. And I just found that when you're competing against 10 or 15 or 20 offers, you just don't have that luxury anymore. But what I love about this is now we've kind of entered the lucky buyer, unlucky seller market where there's tons of listings coming onto the market. The buyer has a lot of choice and selection, and they can really push to like put in the conditions. But more importantly, I always joke with our agents now is guess what? You get to actually negotiate again.
Yeah.
Because before we kind of had to take the seller's price, right?
Mhm. Yeah, we couldn't even put in. I can't tell you how many calls and how many for status certificate reviews that we still do occasionally, but before we were doing prior to the offer being made because everybody needed to go in firm, even on a condo or a condo townhouse.
Mhm. And that's crazy, isn't it, with the status? Because
Yeah.
a lot of times it'll take, depending on the management company, it can take, some of them will give it to you in a couple of days. A lot of people will stretch it out to 10 or 14 days. And you
Yeah.
just don't have that time when the house is coming on the market and they're looking at, the offer in 4 or 5 days.
Absolutely. And the whole deal, the financing of the deal is contingent on the status certificate being clear. So it is a really important condition, and it was sort of being waived by people who, inexperienced um, agents or people who, well, like you say, before the mistakes could sort of be covered up, and it was because the value of the property was increasing anyways. It may not have been such an issue, but now more than ever, those types of conditions are really important.
For sure, because if you did get the status later and you found out it was bad, you could go back to the seller and say, "Listen, let me out of this deal," and the seller would gladly do it because they knew they could probably go resell it for a higher price. Right?
Yeah.
Amazing how these things change. Talk to me about. Well, I think what's number three? Give me number three, third way to bulletproof your transaction in a shifting market.
I think that you know right now agents should also be looking at adding in sort of soft language to cover themselves with respect to warranties. Um, you know, in terms of just saying that the fixtures, like with respect to fixtures and fittings, um, excuse me, that there's, that everything is in working order. The lights are in working order. Any chattels and fixtures that are being purchased with the transaction are in good working order. It's nothing very onerous on the sellers, but in the event that something wasn't working, like the washing machine or the dishwasher or the microwave, if it wasn't working and that condition's not in there, then the seller is not bound. So it's important to have these warranties drafted into the Schedule A so that the buyers are protected.
And it gives you like a leg to kind of stand on, right? Or more importantly, I think it would give your lawyer a leg to stand on so that they could almost call the other lawyer and say, listen, it's right in the contract. But I think you're kind of fighting a battle with one hand tied behind your back when you're calling the other lawyer saying, hey, listen, this isn't working. And the other lawyer is going, so what? It's not in the offer. It doesn't exist. It's your problem.
Exactly. I would also suggest with that to put something in about no work orders or deficiency notices or anything with respect to the subject property, because all of those things, if they're not in the offer, then the lawyers, we really do have nothing, no leg to stand on.
Right. And it's really hard to go back to the city too with even any type of permission to see if there are, get those work orders and what they are and how long they would be to comply with, or if there's, an unsafe porch or roof and the city has put that work order against it, or even just said, you've got this deficiency notice, you got to rectify it. If we don't just put in it, and honestly, basically it's 2 sentences, and all of a sudden now we have all the protection we need.
Yeah, and we're happy to give that, that language to our agents if they don't already have it. I know you guys are, you support your at Keller Williams. You guys really support your agents a lot, and give them good education about this. But if people don't have that sort of support and they feel like they need it, and they have a good relationship with their lawyer, they can just pick up the phone and say, "Hey, I really need to know what you think I should add in here." And that doesn't take us very long, but it does save everybody at the end a lot of hassle.
Oh, for sure. And just adding on to what you said, I always think, and I was a broker record for 8 or 9 years, and so I was really dealing with these issues a lot. If even agents just looked at and went to the RICO website and saw, the convictions, and what the other agents did wrong. I mean, it's pretty interesting reading just to kind of take a quick look and kind of go, oh, okay, geez, I didn't know about that. Or if they would have just had a condition on a home inspection, they could have avoided a year of going through the whole RICO process and the fines and having to do all that other stuff too.
Absolutely.
Okay, so what's number four, Sarah?
I think it's really important to be able to have one last viewing of the property just before closing, sort of within 36 to even 24 hours before closing, um, so that both the clients and the agents, or the agent alone, whoever is going, can view the property and make sure that it is in the condition that they anticipate it being in. And a lot of people, a lot of contracts don't allow for that. But if it's written in the Schedule A, then they're entitled. So I would highly suggest and advise that should be added in for sure.
Sure. So a buyer revisit within 24 hours of closing. I think what's really great for you too is if we go and find a deficiency, we haven't given them the money yet, so we have
Right.
leverage in order to get them to perform on that contract.
Or get an abatement if we have to.
That's right. So because it's a lot easier to get the abatement up front than to go chase somebody in court afterwards, right?
Absolutely. Yep. And usually these aren't major things anyways, generally speaking. But if you and so therefore after the contract, they're not always, if the microwave's not working and you need $250 to go get a new microwave or whatever it is, it's easier to say, well, we noticed yesterday when we were there that the microwave isn't working in working order, and so my clients, because it's in the APS, my clients are going to have to buy a new one, so I'm not going to provide you with that $250. And really, there's nothing they can say to say no unless they fix it. So either they fix it and the buyer's happy, or the buyer doesn't give the $250 and they have the money to go buy it themselves and they're still happy. As opposed to not going and seeing it and then the next day moving in and saying, oh, the microwave doesn't work, and then the sellers are gone, and for the $250, it's just not worth it, and it leaves a bad taste in their mouth. So, they just sort of, it's nice to end on a good note and make sure that the buyers are getting what they're paying for.
Yeah, because I think the most stressful time in people's lives, they are say, death and divorce, but I would think moving is right up there. And I think that they're almost like this general in an army, conducting everybody, getting everyone there, moving in, and your just minimum expectation is that everything you paid for is in working order, right? So why not just do it the day before? I know I just bought a cottage. We came and looked at it the day before, and everything was fine. But at least we knew, and it made like just a lot more comfortable than having a whole truck full of people and all of a sudden finding there's some type of flood or water damage or the heating doesn't work. And now what do you do with the movers and all that stuff? So a little bit of foresight, I think, could just solve a lot of problems.
Absolutely.
Okay, what's number five?
I would say that always remember that the conversation between the agent and the client is the relationship. It's really important to keep a good relationship with your clients. Where the agent has a good relationship with the clients, it can mitigate a lot of issues. I think it kind of, having conversations throughout the whole transaction, and not just before the agreement is signed, ensures a smooth transaction. And I think you and I had talked about this at one point, Glenn. I don't know if you want to sort of talk about that at all as well.
Well, I think yeah, we were just chatting that it is kind of like that. They always say that every relationship is either improving, flatlining, or declining suddenly, or rather gradually, then suddenly. Usually, it's one failed or missing conversation at the time. And I find that if it's a small problem and you jump on it and you're proactive, you can kind of solve it before it becomes a really, really big issue. And I just say don't run away from it, run towards it. You know,
I agree. Actually,
because yeah, go ahead.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. Sorry, that actually brings me to my next point, which was going to be that put out the small fires before they become forest fires. And I think it ties right in with what you were saying there. To run to the small problems, before they become big ones. And it's usually as easy as communicating.
And so for those listening at home, number 6 is put out a small fire before it becomes a big fire, because it's like just a little bit of foresight, a little bit of like, you know, I always find that when you're in communication with somebody, you're building up equity. You're helping them, they're helping you. And then if a big problem occurs, you don't really lose the relationship. It's just a little bit of a setback, and then you can go back. But if you start running from it, to your point, Zara, like that small fire just becomes a raging forest fire, and now everyone's upset. Everyone's talking about suing everybody, and you're like, oh my God, I can't put this fire out.
Yeah, it's true. And so many times, if we deal with it from the outset, um, it's done. It's not even remembered by the end of the transaction. If we're able to deal with it from the beginning, and rather than letting it sort of blow up, and at the point of closing, if the client can't find their agent, or they can't find someone on their team, be it the mortgage broker, the lawyer, the agent, if there's lack of communication there, and a continuing conversation, it can create large problems. And I
Sure. You know,
kind of sorry, go ahead.
oh no, you finish. Go ahead.
No, I just it sort of goes right into the next point that I thought I might add. So if you wanted to touch on number 6, we could do that before I bring up number 7.
Sure. I'll just add that that the whole point of um, of this is to build a business and build a client base of raving fans who want to refer everyone they know to you. And if you look at all the research, 39% of sellers, when they're surveyed and asked how'd you pick an agent, 39% of them were referred to the agent or had used them previously, right? And I think the next 16% was, use the agent to buy their home that they were moving to. So you have a 50% chance of retaining that customer and client by just serving them at a great level and diving in. And if it's a small fire, dive in and go and fix it first instead of trying to repair it later. Because another survey came out that said when they polled um, sellers, buyers and sellers, 80% of them said they would use their agent again, yet only 22% of them actually do. And it's usually because there's no conversation, therefore there's no relationship, or they dropped the ball somewhere. And now they're like, why should I bother using you? Like, look what you put me through last time.
Yeah.
So what's number 7, Zara?
Well, number 7, it kind of builds on what we were just saying there, is to build an allied team of like a great agent with a great lawyer and a great mortgage broker can really make the client experience fabulous. The clients, between those 3 professionals working together, when a small problem comes up, we can call each other and say, hey, do you know about this mortgage condition that just came up from the lender, and what's going on with that? And like, I can call the mortgage broker, or I can say to the agent, you know what, when you go in for the final inspection, I have this sneaky feeling that there might be something going on with whatever in the house. Take a look, let me know. These are small things that we don't need to really bother the client about if they don't become larger issues, because it's our job to look after them. It's our job to make sure that they've got to move. They've got plenty of stuff going on in their lives, and they're hiring this team of three to sort of help them with making the biggest purchase or sale, or one of the biggest purchases or sales of their lives. And so I love when I work with a good a good team, a great agent and broker that I can call quickly to help me, because I don't want to blow the problems out of proportion by having to go to the clients and then telling the clients, can you find your agent or can you find your broker and let them know that this is a problem, because it becomes a larger problem to them. They don't deal with this on a regular basis. It's sort of a huge transaction that is very personal to them, and it becomes very emotional. Whereas we can keep the process going, we can we can sort of eliminate any problems by having a good relationship with the team.
You know what? That's my favorite so far, Zara, of your list. What to do, because it's so true. And there's just this amazing speed of trust that when you have these high trusting relationships with in between professionals, they can pick up the phone quickly, solve any little issue. Because we understand the context of it, where our clients don't. They do this once every 7 years, one every 30 years, one every 50 years. And if they're, especially, people who are easily stressed or worry warts, then it's just going to throw their whole day off. When we're kind of like, oh, you know what? It's almost like, here's 65 things that could go wrong in your transaction, and I'm going to work really hard to make sure nothing does. And so that when that one thing comes up, I could just say to my client, oh, that was number 39. Don't worry about it. We dealt with it. Everything's fine.
Absolutely. And if it becomes a large problem, then of course we talk to the clients, but hopefully it's not as big as it would have been, because you've got a team of people who are on the client's side. And who've already done their best to sort of mitigate the issue from the outset.
That's great advice, Zara. Okay, let's get to number 8.
Number 8 is, I would highly recommend that everybody, in closing a transaction as an agent, as a client, I always tell everyone, gather evidence. Take pictures, take videos. We want to know what's the condition of the house as you close that door when you're selling. How does everything look? Did the movers break a piece of the tile at the entrance? If so, then we know that it was like that when you left, or was everything in perfect condition? And then when the movers or when the new buyers moved in, is it their movers that broke that tile? Unless we have some sort of evidence, it's always he said, she said, and the lawyers really have nothing to go on. But when my clients are moving in and out, I always tell them, take pictures and take a video as you're locking that door. Or on the flip side, when you're moving in and you're opening the door for the first time, talk it through. You know what? We're opening the door for the first time. Let's see what's inside. It's date stamped and the emotion is there. It's nothing that can be replicated, and it is irrefutable, most importantly.
Well, because that's brilliant, because I often find that if there's a big problem and that this ever has to actually go to court to get filled out, the judge doesn't really care about our viewpoints, our opinion, what should have been done, what shouldn't have been done. I mean, a judge is really there to basically review the facts, and these are the facts. This is the picture at the time, the video at the time. This is exactly the state at the time. And as you said, I love the date stamp. It's pretty hard to argue against that when you have that kind of evidence. It's almost like if you ever I'm sure the police, or you'll see it in the press, and they'll get someone, they're like, I didn't do it, and then they find out there was video of it, and it's like, yeah, okay, I did.
I did.
Irrefutable, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So and I think that's the thing, that most agents don't understand is, if you're relying on your lawyer and your buyers and stuff, they need a foot to stand on. They need to be able to go back to the other lawyer, because the other lawyer's job is to defend and deny any allegation against their client, because that's what they're paid to do. They're representing that side of the transaction. But when we can show up there with great evidence, as you said, I think it's just amazing.
Yep, and it also allows for these types of issues to be resolved a lot faster, because they won't go to court then, right? Yeah, if they had to, generally they won't, because if we said to the other lawyer, well, yeah, that tile was broken by your clients, because look here, the moment my client moved in, it was already like that. that lawyer is likely going to go to their client and say, you know what, it's not worth fighting this because they have proof. And so we sort of don't have to, who wants to go to court when they've just moved or just bought or sold a house? It just makes life that much more complicated.
People want to get on with their life and move into their new house and explore the neighborhood, get into their future and not rely on like some legacy issue, right? So we're almost out of time here, Zahra. We just got about a minute left, but is there any other kind of bonus points that you'd like to give to our listeners?
Yeah, just really quickly then. I think if if there are any post-closing issues, gathering evidence is one thing, but let the lawyer know right away. A day or so after closing, if you give us an update on what's going on in that house, any issues there are, tell your client to flush every toilet, turn all the machines on, to make sure everything's working. And if they don't get in touch directly with the lawyer, if they're in touch with the agent, please let us know right away so that we can deal with any sort of small post-closing matters ASAP. The longer the client's in there, the less likely that it is that we can put it back on the other side, especially without evidence.
Sure. And I would even just say to agents, like, if there is a problem, like if the toilet's not working or if there's some minor issue, just go ahead or get a plumber, get it over there fixed. And even if you have to pay for it, it's no problem. The client will love it. They'll really appreciate it. And I know when I would do my follow-up calls with my clients, say, how is it? How's everything? I was almost hoping that something would go wrong because it presents me another opportunity to wow them. And,
be their hero,
and
right?
I think it's right, and be a hero, because I really think that our clients expect us to perform while we're on the clock and but then after closing, we get paid, you get paid, everyone. It's then what happens when you're off the clock. And when you're off the clock and still working and helping your client, you earn like extra bonus points.
I totally agree.
Totally. Well, listen, Zahra, thank you so much. I think you've given that's 9 great ways to bulletproof your transactions in a shifting market. And I just want to really say thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I know a lot of the listeners, I hope will get a lot out of it. And so this is Zahra Marani at Marani Law. What's the number or an email address if someone wants to reach out to you and contact you, Zahra?
First of all, it was a pleasure, and thank you for asking me to get involved with this. Our number is 647-351-7795, and you can always email me, Zahra, Zahra, at Marani Law, MARANILAW.com.
Awesome. Thank you, Zahra. Have a great day.
Thanks, Glenn. You too. Happy Canada Day.